Welcome everybody to this webinar, MSP focused webinar from Exium and ConnectWise. The topic is you can lose big in SASE, avoid it. And as you'll see, what we're really talking about is how to avoid losing big. With me today is Rick Ericson from ConnectWise. He has a long background in the MSP space and the IT services space as well. And I'm Farooq Muzaffar with Exium. So we're just going to get right into it. Thanks for joining, Rick. Appreciate it.
Of course.
Yeah. Rick, do you want to just start with a little bit of background about yourself, and then we'll get into the topic here?
Sure. My name is Rick Erickson. I myself, coming from the MSP world, 15 years plus experience within that. Started at the break fix model and worked my way up to being an engineer and being a man within becoming management, and found myself more and more on the more and more on the management side and understanding and utilizing all the products that kind of made the ability for us to be able to manage all of the fleet of customers that we had with all of these different solutions. And I actually started to enjoy the back end of stuff, so that's why I kind of moved that end. But as of right now, I'm here at ConnectWise, and I'm utilizing the SASE solution and definitely been on this train,
That's
and
awesome.
trying to just understand how to get this deployed out there to everybody.
That's great, and I love your Boston accent coming through. And the great thing is that you've got a hands-on background. It's just like that's awesome because you've seen it all. You've kind of seen the transitions. So we'll talk a little bit about that today. So let's start with, what is the opportunity with cybersecurity and kind of why, what are customers dealing with, and why do they need help? I think everybody is aware, anybody in this space knows about all the transformation going on with customers, customers moving to the cloud and then embracing hybrid work, sort of post-COVID, living with this sort of hybrid work world where everybody's figuring out exactly how many days are in the office and how many days are remote. And then on top of all of this, we've got, you know, more advanced cyber threats than we did before, really around ransomware. Smaller and smaller companies are getting targeted for ransomware because a lot of these hackers are finding that they can go after smaller targets and make some quick money. And then of course we always have the needs for compliance. And then now there's cyber insurance, right? We've got to have a checklist of things that need to be completed so that we can be insured in case we do get hacked. So all of this is what our customers are dealing with. And then in order to deal with it, what they really need is a security stack that works with them, that delivers defense in depth, and it's a challenge to meet these needs with the legacy sort of point solutions that need to be integrated and put together. And I think the whole opportunity here is really for MSPs, because customers can't do this by themselves, and they need MSP help to get there. And then we look at the growth, reports out there in terms of where the opportunity is. This is the strongest category for IT growth this year in 2023, according to Gartner. It's growing at 27%. And the reason, is all the stuff that we already know, that we just intuitively see and feel, right? It's remote work, it's shift to cloud, and it's these new capabilities such as zero trust. That's what's really driving the demand for, cybersecurity. So Rick, I'm gonna ask you, how as an MSP, what are you seeing your customers struggle with when it comes to security, and then as they're sort of transforming and going to the cloud, like what sort of challenges are they seeing?
Sure. So I'll actually dabble a little bit on that hybrid work environment. I just wanted to kind of touch upon on what we had to do as an MSP actually, when COVID hit, and how we had a few clients set up VPN to be able to remote in and so on and so forth. But when COVID happened, it was everybody has to go home.
Yep.
And we had to go ahead and put our thinking caps on, because we know that not only it would be a cost to our customers to set up VPNs and purchase all of that, but we also wanted to find other ways of being able to cut costs for them and helping them out with that solution. So we of course, we were able to utilize our RMM software, and was able to allow our customers to be able to use that to remote into their desktops and servers from home. But I will say, a solution like this, if we had this solution back then, it would have solved all of that, because by deploying an agent to all of those home desktops or laptops or whatever it may be, would have been able to create that virtual network that would have not only secured them, right, but all the
Yeah.
other pieces of security that we already had out there that was already protecting them. This would have added that extra layer on top of that, would have created a much robust style of being able to work from home.
Yeah, that's amazing though that, I think a lot of companies were in the same boat, a lot of, as your customers, where when COVID hit, they were figuring out, how to adapt given whatever tools they had at hand
Yep.
and basically making things work. And then, so do you think that customers now are, you know, are they kind of figuring out like what the long-term solutions are for these things? Or are they still, working on some of these sort of, kludge together solutions that they did during early COVID?
I honestly, it's probably the glued solutions, right? Because again, there's still a cost out there for anything else.
Yeah,
But again, those glued solutions are exactly what they are, right? It's a band-aid solution. It's not the
yeah,
one all true all. So those solutions definitely need to be looked at and taken care of. But again,
yeah,
at the time being, we understood. I mean, again, the cost to the customer, even cost to us. We had to do what we had to do. But now, yeah, COVID's now and gone, and now we're getting kind of back to life. So I think more and more people, and not to mention, Farouk, a lot of these home users or end user clients don't even understand what it is that we actually did to get them up and
right,
running to where they need to be. So to
right,
be honest, most people don't understand where their stuff may be nowadays because you got
right.
half of it in the cloud, half of it on site, or all of it in the cloud, or none of it in the cloud, and you're just using, just web-based applications now because everything changed within the past 3 years so quickly.
Yeah, no, it was definitely an acceleration. And I think the other point that you're making is, customers don't necessarily understand, what it took to keep them operational with COVID. And now, right, there's sort of this technology debt that's there that needs to be sort of repaid, right? Those things need to be fixed and improved.
Yep.
Um,
And that's exactly what I see Exium. To be honest, the more and more I use the product and play around with it and understand it, the
yeah,
more and more I'm just like there's so much potential here with this application. Not and again we could definitely get into it in the next few slides, but again, not only that virtualized network at a quick glance, but being able to securely connect everybody with
yeah.
only a few button clicks, and voila, my site of 100 users are now secured.
That's awesome. Yeah, so let's talk about kind of how we got here, right? 'Cause I think, as you and I were talking earlier, you know, the transition to cloud for most businesses really started with Office 365, right? Because most companies, say 10 to 15 years ago, really 10 years ago plus, had their email on premise, so they had Exchange servers running. They had some file sharing capabilities on, in their offices or in their data center or their, wiring closet, like running SharePoint. And then they had to get, all the Microsoft Office applications, Word, Excel, Outlook, and those were, you typically individually installed on PCs, right? So it was a very, like a hardware-centric model. So you lived through this. So can you kind of describe us to us what it was? Like how was it, the stuff on the left, what did it used to look like, and what was the
Yeah.
transition to Office?
What it looked like on the left. Well, on the left, when I started, you had a server for everything that you had going on. So you had your own file server, you had your own DC, you had an Exchange server, right?
Yep,
So you had seven, depending on the client, depending on the size, you could have 3 to 5 to even 10 servers
yep,
doing the job of now what it is, where right, virtual, it's one. So not only, did we definitely move from just having that Exchange portion, but we also consolidated all of that server, that 10 server stack into one server and virtualizing it all, right?
yeah.
So again, I've lived through it. I've literally walked into closets like that. I kind of miss it a little bit. But it's being able to get all of the hardware and the constant updating of applications, server patching, so on and so forth. When we were able to move Exchange off-prem and onto the cloud, it was a game changer for us. Of
Yep,
course, it was a learning curve for everything, right? But we knew that we're not only we're saving some money for the customer, right? No more hardware costs to them and all the other stuff that come along that. but also downtime if needed. We have to reboot the server once in a while if, that email flow would crash, we'd have
Right.
to restart the server. So, moving it all to the cloud was a game changer because it made our again, you had that, it's Microsoft, so you have that 99.999%, uptime.
Right.
And all we had to really worry about is making sure the users were, put in there and mail flow was going. Other
Yep.
than that, again, it was all off our backs to be able to, again, deal with the day to day with that physical device, that physical server.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And living through that transition, I mean that, that's quite an experience. So I think, one of the things that we don't think about is that this really was a huge opportunity for MSPs. A lot of MSP businesses got established or grew, from this transition because it was when you look at the model on the left, it was very hands-on. You had to have people go out into the field, and it was expensive. It was I think the margins for the MSPs were probably lower. It was more difficult to manage that environment. And it was probably, you had to have local personnel everywhere to do that. And then when you move to the cloud, not only is it more software and virtualized, but there are new ways to essentially new revenue streams, like
Yep, I was just
selling.
gonna say that. Yep,
Yeah,
recurring
yeah. Go
revenue,
ahead.
right? So
Yeah, yeah. Please go ahead. Go ahead, Rick. You were
it's
talking.
not just again the hardware cost. It's that recurring revenue model
Yeah,
and again, right, things changed from that break fix model where I started, and as time went on, it started going to that, the managed services in what it is now, utilizing
exactly.
RMM. Again, when I started, I was fixing laptops, servers, desktops, you name it, I was doing it.
Yep.
And at the time, again, I would walk into an environment, look at these, all these servers. I would, of course, try to figure out how to consolidate them. But there's at the end of the day that there was sometimes there was no way of being able to do that back then. But yeah,
Yeah.
no, that recurring revenue model, again, when we were able to slowly but surely, not only Exchange though, right? Not only Office 365, it's not, if we were able to get one of their third party applications off of the server and into the cloud, that's
Yep.
benefit to us. Again, another server that we don't have to manage and honestly fight with the vendor when issues come up.
Right.
Because it depending on the situation. So and again, the solution that Exium has right now, it's definitely going to go ahead and not only minimize the hardware cost, but it's definitely going to go ahead and create that revenue stream.
Yeah, and I think, we there's a number of revenue streams that started because everything moved to the cloud, right? Like things like backup in the cloud, right?
Yep,
Before, I remember when I
I
first
did
started,
tapes.
it's me too. That was one of
Yep,
my first jobs as an engineer was, running the tape machine in the small data center at one of our customers, right? Like basically, putting in new tapes, taking out old tapes, labeling
yep,
them,
I did
sending
that.
them off for yeah, sending them off for remote storage. Um, yeah, and then having to worry about like, the what became to be called the storage area network, the SAN, right? Like there was
Yep.
a whole network that was set up just for storage because all the bandwidth needs are there for backup. Those are some good times. But yeah, and then when you look at it from the customer perspective, there are a lot of benefits that customers enjoyed as a result of going to Office 365, right? You got applications that are better integrated. So things like Outlook, SharePoint, and the Office applications became better integrated once they're in the cloud because Microsoft, has tighter control over the software. They know exactly what versions are running, and then so on. And there's no more worrying about like which version of Exchange I have because you're just getting it from the cloud. So it's somebody at Microsoft who's worrying about that. And
Yeah, no,
then
and it's funny that you said that, right, Farouk?
yeah,
Because that's exactly what we ran into constantly, right? Because we had clients with Exchange 2013, but they
right,
can't run this version of Outlook. They can't do this. They can't do that. So yeah,
yeah,
you're right. They've gone ahead and created that way of again, everybody's kind of on that same version.
yeah, and it means you get the latest features, so it's a lot easier on your end users. And then you get new apps such as Teams. I'm not a big Teams fan, but things like Teams wouldn't be possible without Office 365, right? Because you have all your capabilities there. So now your user identity is there, and then you build in Teams. And the best part, I think, really is I can take any device, I can log in, and I can access these capabilities anywhere over the internet. And so I don't necessarily have to be in the office or VPN in. and that's fantastic. That's like a game changer in the modern world, right? Being able to work remotely, being able to work from home, and so on. So
Yep.
that was a transition to Office 365, and we think that the way to think about SASE is really that SASE is cloud transformation for network and security. This is that same transition that happened with Exchange and Office 365. It's really simplifying networking and security by delivering it as an integrated service from the cloud. So, if you look at the legacy security stack that a lot of customers still have on-prem, it's hardware centric. It consists of a number of different boxes. Typically, there's a firewall VPN box, right? There's a secure web gateway box. There may be a DNS filtering service from somebody, which is layered onto the secure web gateway. There's probably SD-WAN for connecting the sites together. And then that's just sort of the beginning. That's just sort of the basics, right? And then, you know, the customer or the MSP has to integrate all these together, keep them patched. You're paying for the hardware upgrades, all that. But you also have to, if you ever need to physically touch them, somebody needs to go out and do that. So it becomes sometimes manually intensive, and then there's a lot of wiring, cabling, and so on, right? That's the legacy stack on the left. But what is being replaced by is SASE, which is essentially a cloud delivered, integrated security platform or integrated security services, and no hardware, no software to patch. You get the latest version of software every time. And the key thing, just like with Office, is that these different capabilities like firewall, secure web gateway, SD-WAN, all these things are integrated. And there are new capabilities that are introduced that didn't exist in the legacy stack, such as zero trust, and even things like threat prevention, which you could get on the left, but you'd have to do a lot of work to do that. So you can get now, services that are integrated that basically do intrusion detection, threat prevention, figure out whether there's, looking at your traffic and seeing if there's, any malware in that traffic. And then the security and this network is accessible anywhere over the internet. Same model as Office 365, just done for security and networking. Um, so, so Rick, I'm going to ask you a comment as far as like when you think about customers and kind of what they're facing, what they're sort of still dealing with on the left, right? Um, and or MSPs, like how are they thinking about this? Are they still learning about SASE and trying to figure out what it is? Do they understand this is kind of the same sort of transformation that they've already gone through with Office? Where are they on their journey?
So uh, in this case, right? I mean, where we changed so quickly because of COVID that there's still a lot of legacy, right?
Yeah,
Network stuff out there. And the one, key one that I see here is that VPN.
yeah,
And of course, the way, most VPNs work is that, if someone's at home and they need to get out to the internet, or in this case, they're working, they're connected to that VPN, that connection has to hit home, or in this case, the office where that firewall is located, and then out to the traffic,
right,
right? And in this case, with the Exium solution and having that agent-based solution, where again, there's no hardware, there's no tunnel back, home to the firewall. It's a connection from that home user into the cyber mesh network, and it's going to spit you right out to where you need to go without
right.
tunneling back to anywhere or creating, a little latency on that. Now, again, we have a few things on that left-hand side that this is definitely going to go ahead and you know consolidate, and that's really what we need to do here is consolidate a lot of this because again, a lot of the a lot of the I want to say a lot of the networking power is happening within that cyber mesh network.
Yeah,
So again, you can have a cable modem at your office and then have all of your users utilizing Exium software-based agent, which again, not only is this, securing your connection, it's allowing you to tell the software, tell the cyber mesh network on where those users need to get to. So again, not only you're securing them, but you're securing them to the point where you're allowing them to get to where they need to get.
yeah. So to
And again,
destination. Yeah,
correct.
exactly.
And
Yeah,
and and again, the no hardware software again, I don't need another application or tool, right, to scan my network or back up my firmware of my switches. Again, a lot of networking on-premise switches, firewall. A
Right.
lot of these devices are all going to be consolidated because you don't, at the end of the day, you truly don't need it. I mean, all you really need nowadays is probably with this solution, some APs because most people are on laptops,
Yeah.
right? Everybody's remote, everybody's moving around. So
Yeah.
having an agent on that laptop, no matter where they go, knowing that your end users or your clients is secure, not only yourself, but anything that happens on that laptop.
Yep. Yeah, no, it really simplifies things. And I think, from a service delivery perspective for the MSP, it really simplifies it. And then it makes the usability and the protection for the end customer much easier. I think that's pretty clear. I think customers still need to, grasp this and get their head around it. And we'll do additional webinars where we go into a lot more detail on how SASE works and, what the capabilities are. This is more of a, we wanted to keep this at an introductory, really introduce the topic and really make sure MSPs understand what the opportunity is. And I
Yeah.
think the key thing for MSPs, I think, is that this transformation is a huge opportunity. Just as like when we went to Office 365, that relationship was key, like building that relationship and getting the customer comfortable with Office 365 and backups and remote management and all that. That was kind of the crux of the relationship between the MSP and the end customer. I think this is another opportunity for MSPs to really, help the customer to become much more digital, more agile, right, and be able to work from anywhere and but still be comfortable that they have security and networking under control. Um,
And then also again, we're taking SASE has been around for a little bit, right? But it's only been where that enterprise,
yep.
area. So
Yep.
again, this partnership that ConnectWise and Exium are doing, we're bringing that enterprise solution down to the masses where that small to medium businesses are, and again, being able to protect them with a enterprise type solution. I mean,
Yeah.
that in itself is fantastic.
Yeah.
Um,
That's
and again,
exactly
at,
right.
at, at a decent cost where again, you're not, like I said, you're not only securing them, but you're able to get a lot more data and a lot more insight of what's happening, what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I think as a final sort of topic, let's really dig into what exactly SASE is. And then, as I said earlier, we'll spend a lot more time in additional webinars. We're going to do one of these every month, and we'll have different, folks, myself, Rick, other folks as well. Like we'll ask, various people to present depending on the topic. But we'll get into a lot more depth on exactly what the solution from ConnectWise and Exium is and how it works and all that. But we wanted to just spend today a little bit of time on, the market view, sort of Gartner's view of what SASE is, because they introduced this concept back in 2018. And the idea was because they obviously see what's happening in the IT space broadly and specifically around security and networking. And what they published a paper that really talked about, having a modern security framework where all endpoint data resources and network connections are protected without compromise, right? And delivering this from the cloud. And so when we really read that paper and try to understand what should, secure access services edge or SASE, what should it do? What should it look like? Right? There are a few key things that come out. The first is that it needs to be unified or consolidated or integrated, whatever word you want to use. But basically, the capabilities, really need to be there, both security and networking. And it has to be on a single cloud native platform so that you're eliminating hardware. You're not service chaining, so you're not putting like different individual discrete services and then running the packets through those. That's just service chaining because that still creates other problems. These are because they're not as integrated. So it has to be a unified platform that really brings together security and networking in one package. That's sort of the starting point. And then instead of being technology centric or like hardware centric or network centric, this has to be identity centric. It has to focus on the user because all of the policies and the zero trust access, all that is centered around who the user is of that device. And so it's zero trust and identity centric. And they can, regardless of where I'm coming from, whether I'm in the office, I'm at a Starbucks or I'm at home or wherever, right? Based off my identity and based off of maybe other parameters, including location, it becomes the focus becomes, how do you enable that user to get access to the applications they need? And it becomes about managing user policies and not traffic flow. right? So when you're worrying about a firewall or a VPN at a location, you're really looking at traffic flow in and out. You're not really looking at what users are doing. And so the idea with SASE is, authenticate the users, define access, what they can access, secure their traffic, and then do that 24/7 regardless of where they're at. So that's really the second thing. And then the third thing is it has to be comprehensive, meaning it has to cover users and IoT devices like VoIP phones and printers. It has to connect locations together because if you're going to do security for users and IoT devices, but not do security between locations and say a cloud location where the applications are hosted, that kind of defeats the purpose because then you're splitting up, your security infrastructure. So it has to be comprehensive. It has to cover sort of all network and user endpoints, and it has to, be very scalable and complete. You can't have things that are missing. So it has to include things like DNS filtering, URL filtering, threat prevention. All these need to be integrated. Just like if you think about Office 365, right? You've got Outlook, you've got Excel, Word, Teams. These things are tightly integrated. They work with each other. If one was missing, or if you use one from a different vendor, it doesn't really work the same. I mean, you could try to kludge it and like, try to make it work, but if I went, and used, I don't know, um, one of those products, like let's say my email interface I used from somebody else, right? I can kind of make it work because there are standard APIs for email, but it's really really hard. Like it doesn't work as well, right? Even on mobile phones, like like I see a lot of customers using like Outlook clients, because it'll work, because it has certain thing capabilities that like the native mobile client may not have. So that completeness, and comprehensiveness, that integration needs to be there. And that's sort of the key. That's what Gartner defined, and that's what we've built and that we're showing. Um, and then, Rick, I'm going to ask you to comment as far as, like when you think about SASE and, these capabilities, right, being unified, being, user centric with zero trust, and then comprehensive, right? Like, how do we make this easier? Like, how do we help customers understand this, that this is what they, should be looking for as opposed to like point solutions? Like, do you think customers kind of get that, or do we need to help them more to like really understand that?
So that the comprehensive down below, again, the IoT devices, the DNS. I think the best way to being able to describe this to an end client or a customer would be visually showing them the all the devices that we are truly replacing, right? And
Mm-hmm.
B, we're showing them again, we're replacing those devices, but we're making sure that you also have the same capability that you had before. So we're not taking anything away. So and letting them know that, right? Saying, look, it's a new solution, but don't be afraid of it because it's basically what you're already doing now, just bundled up a little bit better, right?
Yeah.
It's not all of those pieces of hardware that you have to bundle yourself. It's this one solution that already has everything baked in together. And then again, we're still securing that legacy network that is still at businesses that are there, right? And allowing us to be able to still securely, either connect to those IoT devices because more and more IoT devices lately are being compromised and hacked. So being able to tunnel them into a cyber mesh network where again you're allowing the policies like you were talking about earlier. Again, everything's policy driven, right?
Yeah.
So you're allowing these devices and or these users to be able to get to these again, servers, websites, whatever it may be, at that policy level. But
Yep.
again, I really truly feel like again having just sitting someone down, visually showing them these are or take them to the closet and say, see all of these switches, firewalls, all of this is all can be consolidated into this one application. And again, it's gonna grow with you. It's definitely going to grow with you because it is scalable, right? Hardware isn't really scalable. You can't,
Right.
throwing more and more hardware at a solution isn't going to help. So
Right.
this will definitely grow with you and also grow into the future of what we are now. Because honestly, again, the past 3 years have changed the whole landscape, and this solution is there to fill that gap. And again, we're bringing that down from that enterprise level down to that small to medium business to fill the gaps that they have currently.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I think your last point about we're in a sense we're catching up to the last 3 years in a way because there's so much things changed over the last 3 years, and
Exactly.
we've and we've got so much work to do to kind of make it right, right? I mean, we did what we had to do, and now we've got to go back and kind of make it right and make it more scalable, more secure than what we deployed for at the time being. Um, yeah, that's exactly right. That's amazing. I think everybody's struggling with that same thing. Um, okay, great. So look, that was an overview of SASE and kind of what the opportunity is for MSPs, right? We think that if you don't, as an MSP, if you're not thinking about this, if you're not, actively working on your cybersecurity strategy, given that this is the biggest growth area, given the massive transformation that's happening with customers in this space, and then given just all the hype around SASE, you're missing out. You're going to lose big if you don't jump on this train because it's the same thing that happened with Office 365. If you were an MSP, 10 years ago and you stuck to, I'm not going to adopt the cloud, I'm going to stick to managing servers on-prem, like that business has gone away. And so, similarly, this, firewall, VPN, secure web gateway, selling, DNS filters by themselves, these individual piece parts, that business is going to go away, and you got to figure out who you're going to partner with, and we're here to help you. We want to ConnectWise obviously is a great MSP partner, has been for many years. Exium is a new company. We were very much focused on security and networking, really SASE, and we bring sort of the cloud native DNA to this, and so we want to help you figure this out. We'll be doing more webinars. So this was just the first one. We'll be doing more webinars, one every month. I think in the next one, we'll go in much more in depth on what the SASE solution looks like, how it works, and how you use it, and how it replaces some of the existing, devices that are out there. And we appreciate your time. We'll socialize the next one on LinkedIn, over email, through various other channels as well. And we appreciate your time. I know that Rick, you've got a customer meeting that you got to go to soon, so I really appreciate you joining while you were traveling. And we hope for the audience, you guys learned a lot out of this. It's been great having this conversation with Rick. Appreciate your time and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Take care, Rick. Have a safe
You
trip.
too. Thanks, Farooq.